So this is our very first subreddit Writing with AI video interview. And we are thrilled. We'll introduce Gavin in a second, but I am here with Yoav Yariv, my fellow moderator here, and this is something we think will be really fun and useful to everybody who's on the subreddit, everybody who is writing with AI. And our first guest, it's going to be downhill from here, by the way. Our first guest,
Don't believe that. Believe that at all.
is probably the best one we're ever going to have. Full disclosure, Gavin Purcell is a friend of mine. I've known him for many, many years. I met him when I was at Twitter, and Gavin was at Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and then moved on to The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. You are an Emmy winner for your work. And the reason you're here is because you have always been kind of a pioneer at understanding new technologies and how they fit into the lives of creatives. And even before Fallon, you were the producer, or I think creator of a show called Attack of the Show on the G4 network. Co-creator. Yeah, you put together television and gaming and the internet into one big kind of delightful package. And so it's great to have you here. We should have play on music or applause or something. We will work on the sound effects later. But we're glad to have you here. So welcome, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really exciting. I mean, one of the things I'm really interested in is that idea of how AI lets people become more creative. And also, I'm sure many of the people in the subreddit deal with this idea of like the negativity that is placed on AI, like generated content. And, I think a lot about how AI supported content is very different from AI slop, which we could talk a little bit about, but like, it's a big deal.
So Gavin, tell us about your podcast, AI for Humans, which it was the very first podcast ever created, right? I think some 26 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, we were actually doing podcasts back in the 1970s. It was us and the Carson Show. We have been doing it for about 2 years now. I do it with my friend Kevin Pereira, who was the host of Attack of the Show that I made way back when at G4, which is forever ago now. But he and I got pretty obsessed by AI pre-ChatGPT. It was kind of around the time of, kind of like even before Midjourney really took off, but in the early days, if people in here remember, of the Midjourney, really was GPT-3, and GPT-3 was the thing that kind of got us excited about it. So yeah, every week we do a podcast where not only do we talk about AI news, but we really try to focus on the creative aspects of it. And more importantly, maybe even think about the aspects of AI and human interaction and like what it means for normal people. Like, it's like we've been doing it for a while, and there's a lot of like people who are like, you guys are so good, how come you haven't gotten bigger? One thing we don't do is like kind of lean into the hype cycles as much. Like, we are trying to make something that feels good and balanced, but also like is fun to listen to, because Kevin and I have known each other for so long. So we're just both fascinated with it. And it kind of just speaks to my fascination with changing technologies and how things affect us going forward. And as you said in the beginning, like kind of my secret to my life has been like kind of seeing a little bit of a curve ahead. I wouldn't say like I'm some sort of tech Nostradamus, or I would be a billionaire at this point, but I understand a little bit of shifts in culture. And I think right now we're going through a really significant one in the creative space, in the workspace, in all these places, and it's all being affected by AI.
And yeah, you couldn't have said it more true. And what's interesting about the Writing with AI group is for the most part, it's people who are experimenting with all of the different LLMs and genuinely trading notes back and forth, going, well, why is this working better for me? Why is this not working? But what's working for you? It's really fascinating. You guys, I mean, you've been doing this for a while, but I'm guessing you still hear the kind of resistance that we all hear all the time from people. Particularly the way that I'd love for you to kind of talk about is this one where once a week, somebody on the subreddit posts like, why do people keep telling me that if I use AI, it's not writing, right? So kind of, do you hear that from people, and not just writing, but just creative stuff in general?
Yeah. I think the really important thing here for anybody to understand, and listen, I went through this doing a podcast about AI during the Writers Guild strike, and I have a lot of friends of mine who are Writers Guild members. I'm still a member of the Writers Guild. Um, is that this is all tied up in emotional stuff. Like, I think this is not something that is like logical to a lot of these people. You have to really remember that when you hear those sorts of things, many people have invested their lives in a thing that now they see as threatened, and you have to give some sense of sympathy for those people, and understand that they're not coming from a place of, they don't dislike you, they dislike the situation that they feel that they are in right now, right? This is just a normal human thing. The thing I would come back to them with and try to, and I just did a TikTok about this and got a fair amount of this, because TikTok is still a place where this exists. I did a TikTok about my friend NeuralViz's latest video, and if you're not familiar with who NeuralViz is,
Love
like, you definitely
NeuralViz.
should be as a
Love the new
right
video. It's like the first episode of Star
Yeah.
Wars, pretty much.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing I try to explain to people. Like, it's a 12-minute video that kind of plays, really, it's a TV pilot, right? Fred, it feels like something you could see on Adult Swim. And I said in that video on TikTok, I was like, hey, look, go watch this. This is the kind of thing that a single person with AI creative tools and a really good writer can do right now. It was 2 weeks of his work, but it was just him with off-the-shelf stuff. Now, granted, NeuralViz is a professional in the entertainment industry. He has he has sold stuff. I don't think he has anything out yet, but he's sold traditional stuff. Like, he's working on many things. But when I show that to people, even then, when you can obviously tell this is really well written, really well edited, lots of human touch on it, people were saying, oh, he just, wished that into the world. And I think that you have to kind of start to differentiate this idea of, generating anything from what you can do with something. And I think that's the thing I keep coming back to when people say things like that. I try to be like, first of all, Kevin's very funny on the podcast we talked about. Kevin basically said, like, look, you go try it. You see what you can get out of these things. And it's true. Like, Kevin and I right now are working on a video for our startup, which we'll talk about in a bit. And like, he's using Higgsfield, which, is a very powerful tool, but also like, you have to like get a bajillion renders out of it to get the things you want. So it's not just like I'm going to say something and it comes out. And maybe in the future, maybe there's a world where, there's a prompt to feature film. But even then, I still think the thing that's going to be missing, and this is why I think subreddits like this are really important, is it's the human aspect of it, right? Like, your story, your thing that you believe, the things that are your experiences are what you bring to your writing. And that's what matters. Like, it doesn't matter if you use an AI to help you write it. And I will tell a quick story of something. I can't say who told me this, but it is a really fascinating thing. I heard a story about a Hollywood writer who has 3 different AI models spun up at any given time, and he will use it to kind of write 3 different versions of one script scene. And he'll like kind of pick and choose from that. Now, that is very much using AI to write. But like, again, he's controlling the aspect of it. He's making the filter choice. He's choosing what to do with it. Who in that process would be able to do the same thing, except somebody who's already been established as a person that can do that thing? That's where you kind of get at this place of like, it is not just prompting into fruition. It is something that you're using to help you through that process. But also, like, I don't mean to ramble on here, but like, part of it has to do with the work. Like, I think my wife is a novelist. She's not a giant fan of AI writing, and we've had discussions about it. But I think for her, part of it is this idea that like people sit down and do the work, right? Which writing is work. But then I explained to her, I think she kind of gets it, like, part of the work of AI writing is the work of like the creation and then the editing. It's all there still. It's just a slight different tool that you're using to kind of help gestate ideas or to kind of push forward new things. So that's a long answer, but it is something I think about a lot.
Can I just follow up on that? Because I think that's one of the most interesting questions about writing with AI. And I think the core issue here for most people is identity. And I'll explain what I
Yes.
mean.
Yes.
talked with a lot of the, I don't know if you heard, we did a competition, Voltage Verse of writers, and I talked with some of the winners. And one of the questions I asked all of them is, how do you define yourself? What are you? Are you a writer? And it was actually, I was a bit surprised. I actually thought that everybody would say yes, but actually most of them, they like squirm for a bit. They don't
Yeah.
know. They call themselves a creative editor, a producer. One of them called me an orchestrator. They told me an orchestrator.
Sure.
So if I use AI extensively, and let's say you gave a specific example of somebody who creates multiple versions and then pick and choose. It's actually similar like a music producer.
Sure.
Is he a writer, or do we need like a different name? How do we call ourselves?
I mean, the truth of the matter is, in my mind, I believe anybody should be able to call themselves whatever they want. And you can have that right. You can, and this goes to like kind of any part of human identity, right? Like I shouldn't be able to be involved in what you want to call yourself. So I think then it becomes a question of confidence or how you want to define yourself, right? Like I think that ultimately, if you are practicing the art of writing words on in a computer and trying to make books or whatever, short stories or screenplays, I think you are a writer kind of. And you know, the how the society sees you may be different than how you see yourself, but you can do whatever you want, right? Like you have the freedom to do whatever you want. That's the amazing thing about our human lives, is like you can make choices. And I would hope that those people see themselves as writers, because they're working with words and they're playing it around. I mean, I assume even the orchestrators, I would assume some of those people are actually doing significant creative work and rewriting sections and placing things together. And like, that is writing, right? Like that is writing in a big way. I think there's this weird idea that a lot of non-AI native people have about, if the idea or the words come from the cloud, then it's cheating in some specific way, which I understand. Like it feels like that is a hard part in the first place. And as somebody who's written 2 unpublished novels and sat down and spent like, did my morning pages in the artist way, did all that stuff. Like I've spent my time typing out all these things. That part is hard. It's really freaking hard. And writing is difficult. If there's a one thing that could help you get through that process, great, use it. I mean, I think that the other side of this, though, that's important to realize is like, I don't know what the publishing industry is going to say about that. So that is one thing you have to keep in mind, is like, if you're interested in publishing books traditionally, there's some very tricky world there. And again, I haven't been in that space for a bit. So, but like, I even assume that will change. But right now, I think that's something to keep in the back of your head. And the two of you have been following this closer. I don't know a lot about what
I have a very good friend who has been a lawyer in publishing for many, many years. And I talked to him about this. And it's actually the same for book publishing as it is for film or TV. The question is, who owns the copyright? Now, in publishing, you keep your copyright, right? Which is why you don't get as much money. In TV and film, you assign that to the company you're working for, which raises the question, why aren't those companies going after OpenAI and Anthropic and everybody else? But that's a,
Right.
I think it's because they're looking up the road and going, wait a minute, we're going to be in business with these guys. And why do we want to go off on the wrong foot? We're just going to wait and see. The whole thing for my friend in publishing is he said, look, the copyright, the General Copyright Office issued guidelines, and they basically said, show your work, right? So if you save the conversations, if you save what you've done, and you show, oh, I asked all these questions of AI, and it gave me these answers, and I made these choices, then you created something using a tool. The more interesting thing, so I think that's covered. Like, if you're actually doing the work, the more interesting thing is kind of, again, where we started, which is how hard this is. And whether you're neural viz, or you're trying to write a novel, or you're trying to use Mid-Journey to create. I was working on something over the weekend. Somebody asked me to create some Instagram reels using Mid-Journey that were essentially cartoons, right? So it was just goofy little punchlines that people were going to deliver in a certain setting in New York City. And it took me all weekend to get like 2. And it wasn't just the technology. It was understanding, you know, if you know, say, what a cartoonist does to get to that thing, right?
Sure.
That's the hard work. And that hard work is going to maintain the harder, to me, the more difficult question is how, in a world where the algorithm is going to continue to drive discovery, how the algorithm will sort out what you see as opposed to whatever kind of slop comes over the transom. And that has to do with how long do you stay on a particular platform. So it feels to me like Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, the algorithm, well, the YouTube algorithm, I think is fascinating. It constantly gets me, and I could stay all day there. And it is not encouraging slop, and it's encouraging things that the humans are making. So, yeah.
I have a point about that, which I think is an important one. I also write a newsletter, and last week I wrote about AI slop a little bit again, because I wanted to kind of define it, because there's a lot more conversation about this week. And if you haven't seen it, like Meta has just released a new AI video system within its Meta AI app that you can drop a lot. They're getting a lot of crap for that. Here's my thing about AI slop. We all have to be aware of this. But to your point, I think that a lot of people blame algorithms for stuff in general. I hate to tell everybody on this call or anybody listening to this is like, there are not robots watching these videos, right? So the one thing that everybody has to be aware of is that human beings are choosing to watch stuff. And the argument I made in this newsletter, which you can find, by the way, it's I'll give you guys a link, but it's a AI for Humans, Beehive or whatever. It's on Beehive, but it's an AI for Humans newsletter. There was a video that you may or may not have seen that has 190 million views on YouTube. It is a YouTube short, and it is of a baby that gets stuck in a airplane and starts to fly an airplane and wears a little captain's helmet. And it's a story of a baby flying an airplane on its own. And it then like ends with it flying into a mountain. You don't know what happens. It has 190 million views. That doesn't happen because YouTube decided to push it out. Do you know what I mean? That happened because people chose to watch it. And I will say it is funny. It is a well-told story in a minute, whatever. And I just want everybody to realize, like, the algorithmic world that we live in, yes, is going to put you down into like rabbit holes for you, and it's going to start serving you stuff that you want, but it is you making a choice, and you do have the freedom to get out of that. Like, one of the things I do love about TikTok, I have about 6 TikTok accounts on my phone that you can kind of jump through different things. Each one has a different algorithm. So like I have one that's like literally created, it was originally as like I called it AI for Humans experiments, and then it became something else, but it was so I could see that sort of stuff, this like kind of AI stuff. Another one is my AI for Humans account, which is like, you know, I've used it as my main account now. So mostly it's like Seahawks football AI and a couple other things. I'm from Seattle. But this is the thing I think it's important to know about AI content is there are people who are choosing to watch it, but I think I think the term AI slop sometimes gets a bad rap only because it feels like people are saying that this kind of machine out there is making this stuff, because the truth of it is, even if you don't like it, a human made 7 different choices to make the ones that are successful. They are not just suddenly kicked out into the world. I know people will say, like, you'll see all those videos of like N8N or automation machines, like they can do this and they can make 50,000 videos. Most of the time, those people are selling the system. They are not selling the proof of the system, which I think is an important thing to realize. So anyway, this is just a long story of like, humans make AI slop, humans consume AI slop. We should start thinking a little bit about what that term means and how you define it at home as well.
Well, the thing that's interesting about what you're saying, and I was talking with, I know you guys did an experiment. I think it was called Roboto. And then what I was showing people was Italian brain rot. not only did I show them that, I showed them an Instagram from a sold out live concert in Rome, right? And it was kids and tweens and their parents. And I said, look,
Yep.
this might be the nightmare, but I mean, like, how is this any different from any other kind of weird hula hoop kind of fad that kind of came and went? It's just another way of reaching people. I guarantee you those kids in 5 years will not be buying a ticket to another Italian brain rot concert. Or maybe not. Maybe they will. But
Well, Fred, think of it this way. Like, we grew up with one-hit wonders, right? Like, and those were not, I mean, they were dismissed by the music industry. You think about like Aqua's Barbie song, or you think about even Chumbawamba, things like that. A lot of the people feel very nostalgic about those songs now, and they listen to them. And like, there's moments in cultural time. And I think the difference here is now that things that are AI generated have this like AI brand on them, but really it's the same feeling we have. It's like that one hit wonders felt like it was like, oh, these guys are lame. This is too easy. It's like a thing that has happened. And like, it's not that different than that. And I will say the one more thing on this very quickly is that culture is for the subculture. When I say that, what I mean is you may not understand what's going on. It doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. And I think that's, again, goes back to what I was saying before, is that like, you have to understand that you are you. You are not the world at large. You have like only your window of your interests and things like that. And if you find something that isn't interesting to you, or you feel mad about something, totally fair. But that doesn't mean that it's not popular with other audiences or interesting in some way. So I think that's just, it's all, and also like generationally, you are not 12 anymore. I mean, like, that's the other thing. Like, I remember being a 12-year-old and like, you at 12 have like super, I mean, even like, thinking about like Skibbity Toilet, which was the version before Brain Rot, kind of resonated with these guys, right? And that's kind of mostly, it still does well, but like, it's not as big anymore. But like, who cares? Why do you care? Do you know what I mean? Like, when I say you, I don't mean you, Fred. I mean like the world at large. Like, why do you care if somebody's enjoying something and having fun doing it? If you want to try to make that thing, if you want to try to be successful, think about it in that way. Like, okay, well, can I make this thing? Is there a version of this that I can write or I can make? Am I going to try to appeal to this audience? Probably not, if you don't care. So that's another thing to think about, is like comparisons. I mean, I've done some Buddhist thinking and stuff in my life, and I've done meditation retreats and stuff, but like, comparison will kill you, right? Like, comparison, if you compare yourself, it'll start to make you eat yourself up inside.
I want to frame this a bit differently, if I may, because I think that,
Sure.
that as let's say as a creator, as a writer, again, I totally agree with what you're saying, and I don't think it's something special to AI generation. TV films are totally crap, and from the 90s, it didn't get much better than the 90s in the past 20 years. So I don't think it's a unique place.
Well, hold on, Yoav. Can I say one thing about that? How old
Yeah.
are you? How old are you?
45.
Okay, so how old were you in the 90s? Are you alive? No, you're young. So okay, that's interesting. Like, I'm really curious because my thing was like,
I remember going to the Matrix when I
Yeah.
was 9 or 10 years old. I remember it till this day.
so that's what all I'm saying is there's a little bit of this sense of, and I don't want, let's get back to your point, but there's a little sense of this is like where you're based, right? Like there's a moment there that where you're based. Yeah.
Totally. Although, okay, this is we'll get to that maybe on another time. But I totally agree with it as well. I'll tell you how I see it from an artist's perspective, and why do I think they complain, and why do I think it might matter?
Sure.
Is that when you have AI generation, I can produce, as you said, 50,000 shitty videos. And now, let's say, so I create an AI video, and now I need to compete. Instead of competing with 1,000 shitty videos, I need to compete with 50,000 shitty videos. So as someone who watches in a platform that isn't curated, even if I try to look for something good, it's going to take me, instead of 5 swipes to find something okay, I need 25 swipes. So everything is going to get drowned in content. That's the fear. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it, but I'm saying I think that's the fear, that you spam a lot of low effort content into the platform, me as a solo creator who wants to do something great, I'm going to be drowned in it. I think that's the fear.
I mean, I totally hear that fear. And I think the important thing to realize is if you're afraid of shitty content taking away your content, make sure your content isn't shitty first and foremost, right? Like make sure your content is undeniable. This is like cliche advice, but like don't put stuff out that you aren't proud of. Don't put stuff out just because you think you have to have stuff out there. So to me, that's a big part of it. And that goes to the NeuralViz thing too, right? It's like, yes, he's got an audience now, but like I was there, early on when he was pushing videos, and like, if you haven't seen his Tiggy Skibbles character, that blew up on TikTok, and many people would see that and think it's AI slop, but it's got tens of millions of views on TikTok now. It is very, very funny, and I think the important thing is, and this, by the way, the same thing goes for writers. Like I've tried to write my whole life, and I was a writer in TV world, but then also like tried to write books and didn't get them published, and I would like to at some point again. And my wife is a writer who's published 2 novels and teaches writing, especially to kids, and has a writing book coming out, like a how to write book, called The Busy Writer's Guide to writing a book in 100 days. Like, so we've thought a lot about writing, our family. It is impossible to approach any of this stuff with the idea that I want to be successful. Like that's the important thing, is make sure that you are approaching this for the right reason. When I say the right reason, I mean, you should be creating because you have to bring this thing out into the world. Now, I'm not saying you can't look at market, and maybe you should look at market, because like if you, have the choice between either writing like a historical fiction about some boring person from like one part, or like a thriller, and they're kind of equal moments to you, and like maybe the thriller is the right choice because there might be a larger audience for it. There might also be a larger audience for the other thing. I'm not going to put that way, but like you can choose one thing for market, but don't just write to be successful, because like it's hard. And I'm sure, Fred and it will say this too, but Yoav, you may have had this experience. Like you have to write and create because it's enjoyable. And if you don't do that and you start looking for external feedback, whether it's views, whether it's deals, whether it's readers or reviews on books, you will start to dislike the thing you're doing, because that again goes back to the comparison thing. It goes back to like taking away the agency for you as the creative, because you do have the agency. You can't control how the algorithms work. You can't control whether someone's going to like your thing or not, but you can understand how the audience responded. You can understand, okay, I see that they responded or didn't respond to this, so the next thing I do, I'm going to do this. Like you can do those sorts of things, but I guess fighting the algorithm is an impossible thing. The only thing I'll go back to is the algorithm is not designed to service up shitty, crappy stuff. The algorithm is designed to service up the stuff that people want to see, no matter what. And to your point of like the, having to swipe through 25 videos, I can tell you after training my dumb AI slop TikTok, pretty good about it right now. Like it gets me what I want to get. And it's not serving me ones that are bad. Like every once in a while, it'll give me one that's got like 15 likes on it, but mostly it's serving me the ones that are like at the 15 to 30,000 like range already, which is like, this is a very dumb thing, but we should get back to writing stuff. But there's a Bigfoot preacher on TikTok. If you remember when the VO3 videos hit, there's a whole series of Bigfoot preaching, like a kind of a Southern Christian preacher. Really crazy funny, incredibly funny idea. You can only see a couple of those and then you get it, but like, it's very funny, but like those videos are really fun and they serve it up for me. That's
we've spent a lot of time on what happens at the end result, right? About AI slop. And you just said something, I think, which is very profound. And I also think it needs to be talked about in terms of writing with AI. Yes. The thing that's interesting about writing right now is the thing that's interesting about writing is, in general, as we said at the beginning, writing is hard and it's often lonely. And particularly it gets lonelier if you're out there writing something that you really, really, really want to get out into the world. My experience and the experience of other people I know who are writing with AI is very often working with, say, what I do is work with a virtual writer's room. I use Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, and Notebook LM. Notebook LM is my favorite of the partners because it has never watched anything else other than the wonderful thing that I'm writing. But
Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, I didn't know that.
But
I
it
want to
limits
get that.
itself to sources, although it uses Gemini to think through it.
Ah.
It's the unsung hero
Yeah.
of the entire LLM, but it's less lonely and often more fun. And the idea that you could bring kind of a fun interaction into the lonely room where you're putting word after word after word, to me, is the biggest argument for doing this. And every time, even the naysayers, when I talk to members of the Writers Guild and I say, great, let's just take something like a scene you've written and feed it in and say, and by the way, you have to set it all up. This is what I'm writing. This is what I'm doing. This is what this is supposed to be. And you ask Claude's the most writerly of the GPTs, hey, tell me if you think this is working. I'm really worried about X. Like this character is flat or not react right.
Yeah.
And you'll get this feedback, even if it's wrong. You've got somebody else coming in and going
feedback.
they're just not very strong here. Or I know you said that you wanted them to resist on this level. So it, I mean, I'm making a list of points that we've made here. Like, point is, it's hard to write. AI can make it more fun, and particularly if it's something you're just desperate to finish. I mean, along the lines of, I'm dying to read your wife's book about 100 days to book. But to me, right, that AI, I'm sure I don't guess she's using it, but
No, not really. I mean, she's a bit like she definitely asks questions of it, right? Like there are moments where like anybody who's I think that's nowadays it's like pushed forward into the world so much that like that idea, not right, you're not writing with it, but like it's like a thing that is now part of our lives, right?
Yeah,
like in a lot of ways.
Very true. That's very true. So I want so do you then really quickly, when you're preparing the AI for Humans podcast, and are you using AI for research? Do you use AI to help you structure the episode? Do you use AI for your?
It's so funny. You're gonna laugh about this. As somebody who spent a lot of time doing AI stuff, I have fallen back a lot on doing human things, right? Because the truth of the matter is, and the kind of dirty secret about AI in business is that like it's an extra step, right? And like I have not yet found it to be great at certain things that I specifically need. And the thing about the AI for Humans show is it's me choosing and Kevin choosing like what we want to talk about. So like, sure, could I go out there and say like, hey, give me all the AI stories for the week? What I end up doing is I, throughout the week, have like favorited things on Twitter or X, or I will like save things and I'll put them in there. And so like I've made my own thing. Now, granted, I'm sure there is a way that I could use Notebook LM or other things like this to kind of make it simpler. I do use the one place I still use AI is if you look at our YouTube thumbnails, one of the characters in our thumbnails is always a Terminator robot. It just became a thing we do. So I use AI to generate that. But like I come up with the idea because it has to connect in some way to it. And the robot's always wearing something different. So it's really weird to me. Even my newsletter, when I first started doing the newsletter, in part the idea was like, okay, well, I can use AI to kind of write this, blah, blah, blah. And then what happens is the process of writing itself helps you discover ideas. And that's the thing that I also think is a really important thing when you're doing nonfiction, particularly, right? Like one thing that I spend now, time on with that newsletter is I'll kind of gestate an idea and then I'll sit down and write it. But like when I would do the AI thing and just try to get an AI edit, a draft out and then edit it myself, like it wouldn't come up with super unique insights in some ways. And like I've found mostly that I want to do the work myself and that I want to write myself. And I haven't actually done what the writing with AI subreddit, like I haven't done like a whole narrative book in this way yet. But like one thing I can say is I've definitely experimented with, trying to get like outlines for a book or things like that, or see what they can do. Cause I'm a big science fiction fantasy reader. Shout out to the book series Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm sure people in the subreddit know it, but it is my favorite book series of the last 5-10 years. But I think the key is, you have to be really careful because the outputs of the AI are not, and I don't know if they ever will be uniquely you, right? And when I say that, I mean like, even if you edit it, you're not going to get the vibes of what you bring to the table. So there's a way that, Fred, to your point, like talking about it to it and like thinking about it as like a writing partner is a really important thing. But I think the tricky thing is like, if you're trying to get it to generate ideas, write the thing, edit the thing, I just think that's going to end up coming out. Even if you put some of yourself into it, it's going to come out a little bland. And you know,
Look,
that's important.
It knows what it knows, and it knows that very well. It doesn't know that there's something else out there, and that's what we all know, right? So people who play bluegrass talk about this note that's called the high lonesome. Like it just grabs you in your chest, and you go,
Okay.
oh my God, it's so sad.
That's like one of my favorite movies of all time is a total diversion. Is called it's called the Eurovision Song Contest Fire Emblem. It's an incredible movie with Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams, written by a friend of mine who was at SNL, Harper Singer, who had a documentary made about them in that thing. But there's a Spjord. Is exactly right. Movie. There's a Spjord. No, which is
and I think what's interesting, right? But I wrote something about this. My favorite picket sign in the last Writers Guild strike was AI never went to fact camp. But when I went back to my little writer's room, my virtual writer's room, and I said, okay, I'm writing about a character, and I wasn't, but I proposed this. I'm writing about a character who is a young woman who now is an executive, and she carries the scars of having been sent to fact camp for 3 subsequent summers. What are some of the universal things she's feeling? And one of the things that Claude said, and he gave me a list of like 3 or 4, but one of them was, it's the feeling of being punished just for being yourself. And I thought, okay, you could write to that. You could write to that character, and I might not have thought about that, or it might have taken me much longer to get there without just kind of having this dialogue.
Again, that's where it's helpful, right? And like one of the things that's really interesting about writing in general is you get to put yourself in other places, right? You get to put yourself in other characters. And, there's been an interesting thing. I'm sure people in this group have been aware of this over the last 10 years, where there's been a lot of talk around like, and rightly so, like about rising up voices that are writing from their own perspective, right? Like, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, but also like part of the fun of being a writer is writing a world that's large and writing about different types of characters and trying to bring them into it. So yeah, there is a world where AI could help you understand the motivations and perspectives of different characters in really good ways. And I think that like you then as the writer still have to put yourself into that role. Like you still have to kind of feel what that feels. And maybe that's too hard for you. Maybe, maybe you didn't go to three. I was a fat kid, by the way. I didn't go to fat camp, but I had that experience, right? So I know what that feels like, right? Like I was a nerdy fat kid all the way through high school. And then like the weird transformation in between high school and college. What's that? Why it's funny. I mean, I think part of it was just, I was from a divorced latchkey family. Like, so I had that like experience where like I was just on my own and like watched a lot of TV, played video games and all that stuff. But if you don't have that experience, yes, it's important to know that there's this thing out there that can help you understand it. But the other thing is, as a writer, it's your choice. Like, do I want to write that character? Is that a character that is meaningful to me? Do I understand it enough to put my name on it? Because that's the other thing is like you are putting most of the time, unless you're publishing as under a pseudonym, which is also, you're still putting a name on it, but that represents you, right? Like, so just tell the story that you can tell and you want to tell.
I want to jump ahead to something. You and I believe, both religiously read Doug Shapiro. And there's a whole discussion now going on about, and I'll define this for the audience. The audience probably knows this. Skeuomorphic is when a new technology comes around and you use it to imitate the old ones. So movie cameras were shooting stage plays. Television was filming radio plays. The web, when it first started with magazines, you literally clicked to turn the pages of the magazine. All that was terrible. Now there is kind of neomorphic, right? What are new forms? And what I often tell writers when I'm talking with them is in a year or two, people are going to be asking you to deliver something that's not a script to be helpful. So I'm
Yes.
curious, as somebody who is, what you think about that, and what you think might be coming up the road.
Well, this is a good connection to my
Yes,
startup
please.
that I would love everybody to go check out. Yeah, please. So I have a beta startup. It's in beta. It's going to probably break. It's very early, but it's coming out next Wednesday into beta. It's called AndThen. And what you're talking about here is really interesting to me and really the driving force of why I want to do this. Just to be clear what it is AI, it is voice conversations. It is driven by voice. So you're having a voice conversation with an AI character in a specific scenario with a goal to do. Your job is to get something done or do something within that time. But they are human made, meaning that a human, there's a byline on each experience. A human has created the character. They have created the scenario. They have written the prompt for the character. So the character, the AI character and the LLM is enacting out the human's vision of this experience. You can kind of imagine it like the way we've been describing it as like a scene from a movie or a scene from a play or very specific kind of slice of life, right? Or something. So an example of one of the ones that will come out is you have 5 minutes to talk kind of an old biker drifter out of blowing up a bomb in a restaurant. And your job in that 5 minutes is to kind of understand his motivations, understand where he's coming from, get through his past in some way to unlock the fact that he doesn't want to do this. It's a new sort of technology movement in the storytelling means because instead of like me writing out everything, I'm setting up a scenario for you to interact with as the player or the engager. This is where they're not games, they're almost like weird moments of time and interaction. So they do have like gamified elements. In fact, one of the things we're going to release is a daily game show that has multiple characters in it. But what makes it unique is you tell it your name and every day it will come up with a few different things based on what, like the game show, like it will be daily stuff. So like if it's, Halloween, it'll be a Halloween theme one that will have all new stuff and you will get writing that we didn't write because the LLM is interpreting our prompts. This one was made by us, obviously, but for what your interaction with it is. And each time you get a unique experience. Now, what's cool about this, to your skeuomorphic point to me, is I am very interested in how AI changes the creative interactions we have at large, right? And I think that this is something that a lot of people in the writing subreddit are probably thinking, well, how can I get to a book? I like reading books, which is totally fair. I love reading books too. Or how can I get to a screenplay? What this is trying to do is get to a different sort of thing that I think might come soon. This idea of like, what would it look like to interact? Because part of this idea in my mind was always, we're going to talk to AI so much more than we ever did before. And suddenly they're a character in our lives. And what if they actually were a character, right? And you could kind of dive into this stuff. Yeah, Yoav, do you have a question?
Just to follow up on it and maybe focus it a little bit, because I think, again, what you both are saying is really interesting. But I'm thinking from, let's say I'm a new screenwriting, and obviously there's going to be a huge floor of tech guys, closeted creative tech guys, who are going to write a lot. And I already seen it happening. And they're going to think, okay, I have a screenwriter, and because they're tech guys, and they're going to say, okay, what I'm going to do with it? Like, is it, I'm probably not going to publish it. I'm not going to get a deal for my screenplay. But what I'm hearing you saying is maybe a future where I can take my screenplay and turn it into like I don't have to write for someone specifically, but I can turn my screenplay into an interactive experience.
Yes.
And there are many ways to do it. Could be like if it's a fantasy, it could be like an RPG game, text-based. So do you have any, like, if I'm a new writer and I'm writing something, how can I think about that? Like, of making something?
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do with AndThen is make a platform for that particularly, right? So like the goal with our thing is it won't be open day one where you can do these yourselves, but we are building the tools for that. We've already built them for ourselves. It's called Loreforge, which is a very fun writing idea. But so there's a world for our platform that you can come and work with us. And I will say, like, the key is figuring out what the difference between a narrative writing sample is and a interactive prompt. So if you're out there one of the things we did on AI for Humans early on, which is where this idea came from, is we would interview AI co-hosts. So one of the things you can do in any LLM is spend time saying you are this, right? And you may have done this if you're on our audience, and you may have had like your own kind of interactions, but like you can make the LLMs behave like anything if you want. You just give them the thing. What we're trying to do is kind of make those tools really easy for people to do. But to your point, like there's also there's a really great, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's some really great like larger single experience ideas that are happening. Dick Wolf's company, Wolf Games, is making some version of like a Law and Order that's like this, but instead of, we're thinking broader and kind of more specific and letting people make these, they're making like much more significant single down like experiences where you can go deeper on it. And their thing is very interactive in the same way, but it's much more focused on how can we make this like a super immersive experience. The thing that I think is going to be interesting is one of the things we want to do with AndThen is create, and this kind of speaks to the narrative side. Like we have an idea, we didn't get a chance to do it before this launch, but we're working on it next, which is an interactive murder mystery where it would go, there'd be like 5 chapters to it. And you're an investigator, and every day you have the chance to talk to 5 characters, right? And you have to say, so you're landed in a small town, say a Texas cheerleader dies. You land in a small town, and each of those characters has their own motivations. And then what would happen is, this is the way to structure something like this. At the end of each day's experience or each chapter, you almost leave with a pre-written kind of cliffhanger that moves the story forward. So you've had this moment of time of interactivity where you're talking to these characters, trying to learn as the investigator what's going on. But then there's an overarching story moment that moves the story to the next stage. That's the kind of narrative writing that I think will come from this world. Like it's a new sort of thought process. It's not right to left. And I mean, obviously we all know like the great movies of the 90s jumped in time as well, right? Like that was a big movement. This is just like a slightly different thing where what you do and how you interact could affect the larger story, but then you also still have to have like a little bit of structure to drag you through.
So it reminds me of 2 things. One, and we haven't gotten into this discussion, but we could do it another time. Micro dramas, which are engineered within a second, right? It's fascinating. But what you're describing to me, because the overall thing sounded to me, and I'll admit it, I love the Jack Reacher books. And
me too, by the way.
What you're describing are the Reacher books, which is the bus, he walks into town, he's having a cup of coffee at the diner, and then there's a cliffhanger moment. And you're kind of like, hey, Reacher, you going to get involved or not, right? Then he goes and he checks into a hotel, and it just so happens that down the hall, there's like meth dealers, right? And so that's what you described. But I love that idea that you know, and I know we have to wrap up soon. Here's what I'm hearing. Here's what we've heard today. Writing is hard. There are tools that can be used. Don't worry about AI slop. Humans are making choices, and the AI responds to that. You be you. What you're writing, and make sure. And also think about the world that you're going to create worlds and characters and stories, and that in the future, not very far off in the future, those things that people who are in established media are going to be in the same place you're going to be in. And you're going to have, and all of us are going to be newbies and learning how to deliver these new experiences.
Absolutely. I think all that's right. And I will say before we jump, go to andthen.chat. That's our website where these things will be available. It should be 3 or 4 of them available next Wednesday. So please try it. There's also, if you scroll down the website, we are actively looking for creators now to kind of help co-create these things. So, right. So email us, like, you know, right now the scenario is like, again, we don't have the tools to like automatically have you do this, but like we can help make them. And part of our goal here is to try to like lift up voices and tell stories and figure out ways. And I think this particular subreddit might have some really interesting ideas of what to do with this platform, because like, that's also part of the fun of this time, is that like, when you do something new, you're just not sure what people are going to do with it or what will work, right? Like, I'll give you just a quick example of, I do have to jump in a few minutes, but like in the launch, there's a game show. There's this bomb experience I explained. There's a one-on-one experience with an alien who runs a a sci-fi landing pad where you have to convince him that you're able to land your ship, and even though you're not allowed to be there. So like that's one of them. Other things we're working on are like a cozy simulator with a boyfriend type who might have supernatural vibes. Like it's a really interesting thing to think about, like where are the audiences that will respond to this? And yeah, oh, by the way, there is one live thing right now. I'm not sure when this is going to go up, but like if you want to try that brain rots thing, it's at rotobato.com. We are keeping that separate from the AndThen experience right now. We'll be on the website, but like it's so different because it's for a different audience.
I was doing Rado Bato in my kitchen with the sound on, and my wife just came in and went, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
As if I was suddenly trying to be 12 years old. Gavin, this was great.
Yeah.
We cannot thank you enough. If you remember, the very first guest on Late Night with Dave Letterman was Bill Murray. You're our Bill Murray. You are welcome back anytime.